will be traveling with a couple different elements. You have a road case where we've custom built all the foam so everything fits into different compartments. So this will be your main thing. You'll also have a stand and then your TV setup.
We've got a long extension cord, shorter extension cord, power strip surge protector, which you're definitely going to want to have below the CPU, so between the CPU and whatever the main power is. CPU power cable, 2 stands for what are called the lighthouse units for the Vive. In this right compartment, the Vive headset, the keyboard for the computer, as well as the headphones, and additional cables and accessories. There is also an extra Vive pad, just in case the one on the Vive gets damaged, you've got a replacement. In the main compartment, we've got some foam to hold everything in place. You've got the CPU unit, which drives it all. You've got a tablet inside of this neoprene case. You have the Vive accessory pack, which has the lighthouse units, as well as the hand controllers, which are what folks use to actually interact with the experience. All the associated mounts, cables, and boxes for the Vive. So those are, you've got 2 mounts which actually mount up on top of these, and they keep the lighthouse units at a 45-degree angle. And that way the lighthouse units are able to see the floor as well as up to head height. You've got the power adapters in here for the lighthouse units, as well as power adapters for the controllers. And then you have what's called a Vive controller box, which basically is a connection between the CPU and the Vive headset, which is in there. These are the associated cables that run to the Vive controller box, and that is an HDMI cable, a USB cable, and power. It looks complex, but you know, there are a lot of pieces, but they all plug together, and it is pretty simple once you get used to it. So this is the headset. It's got quite a long cable attached to it, and you can see that the cable has this orange color around it. That's so that you know which side of the controller box it fits into. It fits directly into the orange side. So there's no confusion.
You know, you'll measure off your space, and it's always going to be a rectangle or a square. And then these go in opposite corners. So this corner and that corner, or you could do that corner and that corner. So depending on your space. Normally it's nice to hide these, or hide one kind of behind a monitor for safety reasons, just so, you know, it's one less thing you have to kind of worry about, or if you have a table. But that's just something to think about when you're setting up the footprint. Probably the thing you have to be the most careful about in all of this stuff is these lighthouses. They're very sensitive, and they have, what is it?
They have a scanning laser in them.
Yeah, so you want to make sure you don't drop these. This is like the baby.
Yeah, so I just screwed down the lighthouse mount here onto the stand, and there's a little wing nut that goes on it that we use to secure it down. And then we can take the lighthouse unit, and it just threads right on there. Now you're not going to want to really crank it down, because you do not want to strip the threads or anything like that. So, and you just extend it up to head height or above. So, and then we'll do the same thing with the other one. I want to point them toward each other and down at a 45-degree angle, as I said. And there is some wiggle room. It doesn't have to be exactly 45 degrees. So the power adapters for the lighthouse units as well as the Vive control box. On this end, they look identical, but have no fear. They actually have different size plugs, and the ones for the Lighthouse units have an elbow plug, whereas this one's just a straight in. And plug right into the back, like so. So in this case, we would put the CPU over here and maybe face the TV out so that we can draw in traffic. So that's going to be sort of our central power area, and we'll branch out from there to power that lighthouse as well as the tablet. Black extension cord is for the tablet. So wherever you want to put the tablet for sharing. You've got a display port to HDMI, which runs to the TV. You've got two Wi-Fi antennae. You've got a USB cable that runs to the Vive controller box and an HDMI that runs to the Vive controller box. And all of those are going to plug into your CPU unit. So I'll start with the antennae. Sorry. So the display port, this is what handles all of the graphics. So it's going to be the HDMI for the Vive, as well as the display port for the TV. There is a USB that is actually dedicated to VR that runs faster than the rest of the USB ports. So that's the one you're going to want to plug the Vive USB into. And then the power just goes direct into the power. So the last thing that we're going to want to plug in is there's actually a dongle for this keyboard, which lives inside of the battery enclosure for the keyboard. I would say your best bet may actually be just to leave it in the back of the computer all the time, because they're very small.
Yes, very easy to lose.
Yes.
That's
And are there those AAA batteries in the keyboard?
These are double A's, and they last for quite a long time.
Okay.
I've had a computer that it's been running on the same, or a keyboard that's been running on the same set of batteries for about a year. And let me grab the Vive controller box and the Vive controller power. And again, this one has a smaller barrel plug, and it's not the elbow connector that the Lighthouse has. So we'll plug that in. And what we usually do is we'll actually, once we get everything installed, we'll actually tape it down. Either to this, or oftentimes if we've got a table, we'll tape it down to the table. So then we take the USB and the HDMI, and we plug those into the back of the Vive controller box. And the ports are labeled, so there's no confusion. But again, make sure you plug it into the black side and not the orange side. And then we can plug in the headset. So all these cables, again, they only have one place they can fit, so it's fairly straightforward. So this DisplayPort to HDMI is going to run up to the TV. Lighthouse units have a light on them that's a status indicator, as well as a light to tell you what channel they're on, and they have 3 channels. You shouldn't have to worry about it. They're already preset, and it should work great. A blue light usually means it's either unstable or it can't find the other lighthouse unit. So you see it just went green. So these lighthouse units now are connected. If they're not synced, there's actually a cable that you can run, which is included. Yet another cable, which it just looks like a standard audio cable. And you would run it around the back just the same way you did the extension cord. You're going to want to make sure that your computer is able to get online so that shares can go.
Are you able to have this monitor in place if there's zero internet?
Yes. Yes, you are.
Can you use the experience without the internet?
Yeah.
So it's just sending out for the
Yeah, it's
social
just
media?
sharing.
Okay.
Okay, so there's an app called Steam, which you're going to run. Steam is it's the software that runs the virtual reality. So you're going to open that up, and up here there's a little VR button.
Can you do that through just a search, or can it be placed on the desktop as a shortcut?
We could put that on the desktop, yes.
If we don't have internet, how would we
It'll be on the
It's
desktop.
within the.
It's already
Yeah.
programmed in there.
So when you come back to your
so-
office, you just hook up the Wi-Fi?
Yeah, let me go ahead and turn off the Wi-Fi just so that we can run through that and you can see what it looks like if you're connecting with no internet. So you can still, you type in Steam and you pick this Steam desktop app. And then you go to Start Steam VR. And that's this VR up here. So that starts this, and it's going to give you some message about what is going on. So here it says base station setup problem. They're not syncing, make sure they're set up properly. It'll actually take you to troubleshooting steps, but I would say the first thing would be to plug in that cable. I would say most of the time we've had good success with no cable, but we actually have one of our back rooms in our office. We did have that issue. So the cable is a great option for that. And
That automatically links them, the cable does?
yeah,
So no
Yeah.
matter if they're not set up at the right angle or whatever?
yeah. Whenever you set up, you need to run room setup to tell it what your space is, because it doesn't know. You know, and whenever you set up, these are actually going to be in slightly different positions, and they can be. You've got wiggle room to say, okay, well, I want it to be a 7x7, I want it to be a 7x8, I want it to be a 10x10 today. But you need to run room setup in order to tell it what size and shape of room you want to be in.
And this fun little animation setup will run you through it. And it's very
So 3 cartwheel
self-explanatory.
footprint, is that what?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So this
Because this
is
is technically available for people to buy and play at their home, not the CGA game, of course, but you know, some of these canned games, just like a video game setup you would have.
Right.
yeah.
So
So we're going to go ahead and run the room scale. setup. And let me go clear that so that we don't accidentally step on it. So the idea would be you want to clear out your space, or at least clear out the edges of your space.
You watching the little guy?
Yeah, that's he cleans like I do.
Okay, so then we're going to power up our controllers. And the power button on the controllers is this one below the touchpad. And you'll hear it make a sound, and they should come up green.
Yep.
And then you'll see them pop up there.
You'll see that animation change too. It's all lit up now and ready to go.
Yep. So now, locate your monitor. In this case, because it's designed basically for a living room, so their idea is that you'll be pointing it at your TV. In this case, it's actually an outward-facing monitor so that consumers can see what folks are doing.
Used to orient the overhead view in a later step with. Place both controllers on the floor and visible to the base stations. Then click the Collaborate floor button and wait while calibration completes. You can also click the trigger and then place the controller on the floor to finish calibration. Next, we will measure your available space. This space should be free of any obstacles that you might collide with while wearing the headset. So that created, if you saw it, a blue sort of translucent grid, and that is what you'll actually see in the headset if you do get too close to the wall.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to hold the trigger and trace the outer perimeter. I basically just traced the square that I'm expecting us to be running in.
And he's holding down the trigger.
All right, so this is our play area. So it takes a square area that is inside of that area that I just traced out.
Everybody's happy.
Yeah, big win.
Party is ready. So again, that's the Steam portion. So now your hardware is set up to run virtual reality. It doesn't know what yet. So we'll open the app now.
So with this, it comes with immersive sound, and the sound is actually run through the cables to the headset, and you've got this audio jack here. So we'll plug the headphones into that audio jack, and when people are going to use it, they're going to first put on the headset and then put on the headphones in that order. If they do it in the opposite order, then the headset's not going to fit on right, and it's just bad news. After the calibration, it takes you into sort of a fun virtual reality experience, so you can learn about the controllers and whatnot. You don't need to do that. We can go ahead and close that. And at that point, your VR space is set up. So you're good to go, and you can see down here, Steam VR is now ready. This screen is mirroring what the Vive is seeing. So you're basically seeing what whoever in virtual reality is seeing. And power it up. Powering it down is as simple as holding down the power button for 3 or 4 seconds and hitting power off, and then confirming it by hitting the power off button. And that'll shut it down, and it will no longer use up battery power. Now, it has a charger with it, so it should maintain charge, and if for some reason somebody does forget, you should be able to charge it up. It will take a few minutes to get enough charge to boot up though, so you would want to definitely make sure it's in and plugged in a little bit ahead of time before you want to go live. It's a
Samsung
Tab S2. So in order to lock the application on screen, we needed to use a gesture pattern as the password. And it's just letter C. And then the app, you can see down here, is called sharing. And it's got a settings screen. And then you can go through and people can put in their information to share their 360 image. For the smoothest use, having the internet on both units is ideal.
Now, a couple things that you will want to tell each user before they step into the experience. One, make sure they know how to use their hand controls, and JP will explain this in just a second. Two is you definitely want them to know there's going to be instructions on the screen and in audio, and before they begin anything, it's really important that they read through it or listen to it so they know what they're doing when the experience begins.
Cool. Well, I'll go through first, and you can see what's going on screen, and you can kind of see what I'm doing, and I'll talk through it. So I am going to put on the headset, and you're going to want to hand people the headset, and then you're going to want to hand them the headphones, and then you will want to hand them the controllers. And the controllers do go to sleep after a while of non-use, so you're going to want to make sure that they're turned on. The user can take a second to look around, and then when they're ready, they can hit the trigger, and it'll bring up the instructions screen. And the voiceover is going to start, which is reading out the information that is in the instructions screen. What we found is that a lot of folks don't, either they don't read it or they don't listen, but they usually do one or the other. So once this is done, the 811 button starts to blink, and I can trigger it just by touching it with my hand. And I see some pipes down there, and then the locator, utility locator truck comes.
And he did hear some voiceover when he hit the 811 button. He was technically calling 811, so it said they were sending out someone, and that's when the truck showed up.
Yep. And so now I've got these objects that I can try to place in my yard. Once this entire animation is complete, the clock starts. It looks very jerky on the screen, I imagine, but it is much less jerky inside of the unit. So you can see that a balloon popped up, as sort of a celebration.
Did you do something right?
So JP's just using the hand control. He's pressing the trigger to pick something up. You hold the trigger down to pick it up, and then when you want to let the item go in the yard, you release the trigger.
Yep.
Can
And
you
if I don't
walk out
want
of
to,
the
if I
yard?
decide I don't want to put this one down in the yard, I can just drop it over here and pick up something else. I am just staying at the table with this constrained space. I don't know if you can see it on screen, but my wall is about right here
Okay. Oh, wow.
and right here, and then just to the other side of the table. So with a bigger, you can of course walk through the table, which is, it feels a little odd. And check out your yard, and then I could actually go here and look down here.
Look at the pool even has the that's in.
So can you walk over and see the side of the house right now?
I cannot. The space is constrained such that I can't get to that side of the house. Yeah.
And then the clock does stop whenever there is voiceover, or there's like a congratulations message or an error message that comes up. That stops the clock momentarily, just so they have time to pay attention to the hot air balloons coming up or to read the messaging, and then it'll start over. It won't start over, but the clock will continue to run down after that.
Let's have somebody walk around the whole time.
And on the model, you can see where the pipes connect to the house on the side and in the front. And then when you press the 811 button and the yard disappears, you can see that the pipes kind of go into the side of the house too. So they're definitely able to see all of the pipes. They're just not able to walk over and look at them like connecting to the house.